What if you were going to die 6 months from now? What would actually change about your priorities today? This isn't a question meant to stir fear, but to awaken a rare kind of clarity. Most people live as if life is an endless road, where there will always be time to fix what was left for later. But what if there isn't? What if the time you think you have is actually the time already slipping away? Life is like an upside-down hourglass. We hold it in our hands, but we can't see how much sand is left at the top. All we know is it keeps falling, grain by grain, second by second. And it's precisely this lack of control that demands something deeper from us than hurry. It demands presence. It demands conscious choices. It demands the courage to live with intention. But what holds us back? Maybe the greatest trap of our time is the illusion that we'll always have more time. That quiet, persistent lie delays important conversations. We postpone reconciliation. We procrastinate our dreams. We leave for tomorrow what our heart is crying out for today. And in doing so, we become experts in survival, but amateurs in truly living. It's strange how we've grown used to treating death as a taboo, as if avoiding it in conversation could somehow delay it in reality. But the awareness of death isn't the end of hope, it's the beginning of wisdom. It's what the book of Ecclesiastes means when it says, "It is better to go to a house of mourning than to a house of feasting, because there the heart becomes wise." Death, when seen through spiritual eyes, doesn't paralyze us, it wakes us up. A short life is not the problem. The real problem is living without intention, without direction, without truth. It's waking up every day as if it were guaranteed. It's ignoring what is essential because of what is urgent. It's filling our time with what distracts us instead of what transforms us. It was at this point in my journey that a few choices had to be made. Simple choices, but profound. Choices that slowly changed the way I saw time, silence, God, and myself. These 5 choices radically changed the way I live. And maybe they'll save your time before it runs out.
1. I cut off the silent comparison, the invisible addiction that was draining my days. Comparison doesn't shout, it whispers. It slips in through the crack of a distracted scroll, settles in without asking, and quietly starts to corrode the heart. What makes it so dangerous is how harmless it seems. Just a video of someone more accomplished. Just a photo of someone happier. Just another milestone reached sooner. But without realizing it, you begin measuring your life with rulers that were never made for you. Silent comparison is a modern addiction, an invisible one. It doesn't leave marks on your body, but it carves scars into your soul. With every swipe of the finger, your mind drifts further from your own story. Gratitude becomes scarce, productivity dissolves, and purpose begins to lose its color, its shape, its meaning, because your focus shifts from who you're becoming to what others are displaying. We live under the spell of social dopamine, likes, instant validations, digital rewards that feed the ego but starve the spirit. The brain learns to crave applause, not progress, to seek approval, not authenticity. And in this addictive cycle, we stop being whole just to become pleasing. But there's a deeper invitation to return to your own essence. Galatians 6 gently but firmly reminds us, each one should examine their own life, for each will carry their own load. There's wisdom in that. There's freedom. Because when you look honestly at your own path, you begin to see there is no shared finish line, no universal script, no external metric that can measure what God is building within you. It was only when I stopped looking sideways that I finally heard the voice within. Not the voice of ego, not the voice of comparison, but the voice of conscience, of identity, of direction. And in that reconnected silence, something new began to grow. Lightness, clarity, peace. It's not always easy, but it is necessary. Because as long as you're trying to become what others seem to be, you'll never discover what God dreamed you to be. And that is a kind of waste time cannot afford.
2. I disciplined my time before I felt like it. There was a time when I believed desire would come first. That one day, I'd wake up and feel an invisible force pulling me into action, as if suddenly motivation would appear out of nowhere like a divine breeze and everything would become easy. But what I didn't know, or maybe didn't want to face, is that the human brain is lazy by nature. It doesn't want what's best. It wants what's easiest. And while I was waiting for the feeling, time kept slipping through the cracks of my day. I learned, painfully, that waiting to feel ready is a trap. Action is not the result of motivation, it's the other way around. Movement ignites the spark. Doing creates the desire. But that takes discipline. And discipline has no glamour. It's made of small yeses to simple things, of invisible choices, of quiet repetition. It is born in discomfort and blossoms through consistency. Proverbs 6 struck me like an arrow. Consider the ant, which having no commander or overseer, prepares its provisions in summer and gathers its food at harvest. There are no spotlights on the ant's routine, but there is wisdom. There is long-term vision. There is reverence for time. And that challenged me deeply. How many days had I let pass by waiting for the right mood, the right feeling, the right spark? How many moments were lost in the gap between desire and decision? When I started building sacred routines, simple but steady, I noticed a profound shift. My mornings stopped being random. My afternoons found shape. My evenings brought closure. And the most beautiful part, it wasn't about productivity, it was about presence, about aligning my pace with a greater sense of purpose, about realizing that time is sacred territory, and the way we inhabit it reveals what we truly worship. Disciplining time doesn't mean becoming rigid, it means becoming intentional. It means remembering that today won't return, that the clock doesn't wait, and that life, to truly flourish, needs structure. Feeling motivated is a bonus, but acting without motivation, that's where transformation begins. And it was there, in that small and steady choice, that my life began to change from within.
3. I traded waiting on God for moving with Him. For years, I confused faith with stillness. I believed that trusting God meant stopping, passively waiting for something to happen, as if spiritual maturity was measured by my ability to do nothing. I called it faith, but it was fear. I said I was waiting on God, but deep down, I was just frozen, afraid to make a mistake, afraid to lose, afraid to act outside of His timing. Until one day, while reading one of the most powerful passages in Exodus, I came across God's words to Moses as they stood before the Red Sea. "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the people to move forward."
That sentence lit a fire inside me. Because God wasn't rebuking the prayer, He was rebuking the paralysis disguised as prayer. And I understood. Faith isn't a period. It's a comma that pushes us forward. Faith is movement toward the unseen. It's walking even when your feet are still trembling. That's when I began to see faith as a dance. God leads, but I have to follow His rhythm. It's like riding a bike. You only find your balance while in motion. Stop, and you fall. And that movement isn't about rushing ahead. It's about listening. It's about sensitivity. It's about the courage to step forward, even when the map is still blank. I realized there were areas in my life where waiting was just a subtle excuse. Relationships I hadn't healed, dreams I wasn't feeding, decisions I kept postponing, placing on God a responsibility He had actually invited me to share. It was freeing to understand God walks with those who choose to walk. He directs those who are willing to be led in motion. Moving with God doesn't mean rushing ahead, nor does it mean staying behind. It means walking alongside Him. It means being attentive to His direction, but also willing to take action. It means hearing the whisper and turning the whisper into steps. Faith, in the end, is exactly that, a continuous act of listening and obeying. And when I traded waiting for partnership, I realized that heaven moves in response to our yes. Because it's not strength that opens paths, it's obedience. And where there is obedience, there is presence. Where there is presence, there is purpose. And where there is purpose, time is no longer wasted. It becomes fully lived.
4. I redefined success as peace, not applause. For a long time, my inner compass pointed outward. Success, to me, was whatever others could see. It was the sound of applause, the measure of recognition, the approval of those around me. I wanted to be noticed, valued, praised. And without realizing it, I started to shape myself around others' expectations. I smiled on the outside but felt empty inside, applauded but restless, achieving much but slowly losing myself. Then one day, a verse from Proverbs struck me like a mirror. Better a dry crust with peace than a house full of feasting with strife. It cut through me in silence. I realized I was filling my life with noise, when what I most needed was a little peace. Not peace that comes from favorable circumstances, but peace that flows from a heart aligned with truth. The kind of peace that isn't about how much you have, but how you live. Not about what you conquer, but about how whole you remain. There came a moment when I had to make a hard choice. A project that promised status, money, visibility. But something deep within me told me it wasn't the right path. I sensed it would pull me off center, slowly steal pieces of my soul. So I stepped back. And what I received in return wasn't money or applause. It was integrity. It was lightness. It was an inner silence that let me sleep in peace. Since then, I've come to understand that true success doesn't shout. It whispers. It doesn't need stages or likes. It lives in a clear conscience, in honest eyes, in the alignment between what I believe and how I live. It reveals itself in those moments where I don't have to prove anything to anyone. Just be. Just live faithfully to what I believe. In the kingdom, success isn't about speed. It's about direction. It's not about visibility. It's about consistency.
It's not about how many follow you, but who you became as you walked. And often, that means letting go of big achievements in order to remain faithful in the small things. Because peace is worth more than any prize. And in the end, what sustains the soul is not how celebrated it is, but how true it remains.
5. I started living today as someone who is already dying, because I am. There's a phrase that echoes through the quietest corners of the soul. Every day is one day less, not one more. But most people live as if it were the opposite, as if life were an endless vault of opportunities, always waiting for later. Later I'll say I love you. Later I'll forgive. Later I'll change. But what if later never comes? Death isn't an interruption, it's a certainty. And it doesn't have to be feared in order to be respected. When death becomes a presence, not as a shadow but as a counselor, life lights up with a clarity that's hard to ignore. We stop postponing what truly matters. We begin to see the value in the moment. Every conversation gains weight. Every choice gains depth. Every small gesture becomes a reflection of something eternal. I remember an ordinary day. Nothing special, just a quiet evening and a blank page. There, without any real intention, I wrote a letter as if it were my last. And something shifted, because on that page were truths I had always known but rarely spoke. Feelings that had always been there, but I had seldom shared. There were my bare priorities. No excuses, no distractions. And in that exercise of farewell, I found a new way to stay. The writer of Ecclesiastes once said, "It's better to go to a house of mourning than a house of feasting." Not because grief is better than joy, but because mourning wakes us up. Because those who contemplate the end begin to live the now with greater truth. Death reminds us of what hurry makes us forget, that we don't have time to live in lies, to fake happiness, to waste presence on empty distractions. Since then, I've started to see time not as something I spend, but something I offer. Each day is an offering, each decision a testament. And when I live this way, aware that I am dying, I stop merely surviving and finally start to exist. It's not about fearing the end. It's about living so deeply that when it comes, it finds a story worthy of being concluded.
C.S. Lewis once said he didn't believe in Christianity just because it was comforting. He believed it because it was true. And that truth, once accepted, changes the way we breathe, the way we choose, the way we live. Life is short, but it doesn't have to be small. Because eternity doesn't begin when we die. It begins when we awaken to the reality that every moment is sacred. Imagine your life as a well-written story. Every action is a sentence. Every silence, a meaningful pause. And every choice, a turning point. You're not just passing time. You're writing your final chapter right now. It doesn't have to be grand, but it must be true. It must be yours. It must have purpose. These 5 choices weren't born out of perfection. They were born out of the exhaustion of living on autopilot, out of the pain of looking in the mirror and not recognizing the soul behind the eyes, out of the deep desire not to waste what I still have left. They're not formulas, they're seeds. Small decisions that, when watered with awareness and faith, blossom into a new way of being. More simple, more present, more whole. You've already postponed so many things. You've silenced dreams. You've ignored the heart's quiet warnings. But there's one thing that can't wait any longer: the choice to live with intention, before it's too late. Because in the end, it's not about living longer. It's about not wasting the time you still have.